This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Hassan Akmal, who is a global career service thought leader, future of work expert, AI visionary, and founder of AI startup Aya. Hassan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. What an honor to be here. And I
Oh,
love that,
first,
the Prince of
first and
Motivation.
foremost, it is an
I'm
honor to have you on, especially when the title throws me off. When you got A, B, C, D, E, F, G next to your name, I could only imagine the amount of lessons that you have learned over the many years to obtain a long title as that.
no, you did you read it beautifully, and I already learned something from you already with the phrase behind you. Dreams are more than
Ah,
excuses. So I love that.
come on, come on. I know you would appreciate something like that. It's always important to have those quotes that hold you down. I've seen that you have some good quotes as well too. So we're gonna dive into that, and our listeners are gonna want to know a lot about your career and what you've been doing. But before we get deep into that realm right there, just give us a little bit of understanding. Where did it all start? Tell us a little bit more about your childhood and your cultural background.
Yeah, no, thanks again for the opportunity, and shout out to Greg as well for helping make this episode happen. I've heard great things from a couple of your former guests as well,
Yep, yep,
folks
yep. Shout out to that.
from across the country. Shout out to Dr. Yasser Kurd at JHU. But yeah, so parents, South Asian, English definitely not my first language. I grew up speaking Urdu in the house, and I was technically almost on a plane before I was born. So my mom, I was in South Asia, but when it was birth time, basically, she jumped on a plane so that I would be born in essentially the mountains of Montana, Bozeman, Montana. So that would be a U.S. citizen, and then basically went back to South Asia. So my
Wait,
early
you were
years,
born on the flight?
no, I was born
Oh,
technically on the ground,
oh, okay.
but I was just kind of joking, just because she was smart, right? She's like, I'm gonna jump on a plane and have him be born in the U.S. and then we'll go back to South Asia, and so technically I was born in Bozeman, Montana, but grew up early years in South Asia, and then kind of came over to California, where I grew up in Central California, about to the age of 18. But yeah, English not being my first language, for a while we weren't really allowed to speak English in the house because they wanted me to kind of retain the heritage and the language and the culture and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after graduating from high school, went on to move to Southern California, right? And went to UC San Diego. But I was a big shot tennis player as a junior. So as a junior tennis player, I was number one in Central California from like the age of 12 to 18, undefeated in boys 14s for the whole year, and won the club championships, and was like top 10 in NorCal, in number nine technically, in juniors. And so I was a big tennis player, and went on to turn pro. So I left UC San Diego and turned pro, and traveled the world, and eventually kind of got recognized and recruited to UCLA, which was number one in the nation. So
Yeah.
spent a big part of my life in Los Angeles, and one of the first ever pre-med aspiring pro athletes, I guess you could say. And
That
kind of
must have
story
been
continues there, but I'll stop there. But
that must have been very hard to kind of be a D1 athlete and at that level, you know,
and the,
being
and the
able to
pressure.
juggle all that, the amount of pressure. When I know we're going to talk a little bit more about being that D1 athlete, but just hearing that story, and stuff like that, I think that are already admirable, to know that it's doable. You just have to be very
Exactly.
disciplined and focused. You have to probably have some really good mentors or coaches to kind of hold you down during those hard times. But yeah, just to juggle all that stuff. Like what was like your childhood growing up? I know you said obviously born here, went back home to lived there for some time, then came to different parts of the U.S. and stuff, and obviously college as well too. So like, what was the childhood when you were growing up?
Yeah, I feel like it was like my heritage and all. It's just kind of rooted in like a spiritual resilience, because definitely wasn't easy, right? So I was the only brown boy in my high school, and I remember I would be playing softball, and I'd be going to bat, and I could bat because I was a big tennis player, and they would be like, dark man, watch out, everybody back. He knows how to hit the ball." So like I was,
Wow, wow,
in a
wow.
small town, in Fresno County with Clovis, where there's a rodeo. So I definitely stood out, and I feel like I had sort of this spiritual resilience, which I think comes from my parents, and just the struggles that they did to kind of, give us an opportunity to be educated in the US with like a hint of some poetic soul, right? That comes from, I guess, maybe father and grandmother. But it was like a confluence of calligraphy of life, right? But then competition. I grew up in a community of doctors, right? So that everywhere around me was doctors competing for the biggest house, who had a racquetball court in their house, who had the biggest house, etc. And so success was something that was kind of portrayed and framed in front of me as something that was non-negotiable, that you had to be successful to be respected in the community. That being said, my parents were very humble, very simple people. Both my parents were chemists. My
Oh,
dad
wow.
was, yeah, worked for the state. My mom, she was a professor of biochemistry back in South Asia, but a housewife here. And unfortunately, early on, my father passed away at the age of 11 suddenly. And so, night before it came to us, and kind of gathered us in the hallway, just my brother, older brother, and younger sister, and said, "One day I'm not going to be here. Take care of your mother." We just thought it was super odd. Next morning, woke up, mom screaming, he couldn't speak, lost his voice. That led to my mom kind of saying our names and her squeezing her hand, and then eventually he lost his sight, and so on, and passed away. And so that kind of turned our life upside down.
Wow.
And up until that point, they were hustlers. So dad was working, bought the house, was a big family man, super committed to his favorite thing was taking the family out to dinner. But we were working at the swap meet on weekends, selling backpacks and educational supplies just to basically make ends meet. And so you can imagine, after my dad passed, how difficult that path became.
Mm, mm, mm,
We were still getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning on weekends, and I'd be trying to make it to the tennis courts after that. So rough
mm, mm.
decade plus, where community and folks were saying, "You got to move back. You're going to lose the house. Move back to South Asia. You can't make it here." Instead of really helping,
Damn.
a lot of people were discouraging us. But my mom stood brave. Raised her
Shout
three
to
kids
mom.
on her
Shout to
own,
mom.
and saved the house, and now it's paid off, and she's retired. Thankfully, we
And
retired her.
I know, right? That's the hardest part with some moms. You got to sit down sometimes now. Um,
Exactly.
well, I was gonna say, how many siblings?
So I have an older brother who was kind of this computer genius, published a video game like in the seventh grade, and eventually sold his company, VR company, to Apple. And then he worked at Apple and AI, and a younger sister who's a pharmacist. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I'm the middle
Yeah, yeah,
child.
yeah, yeah. Y'all holding some weight out there.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, okay. Congratulations on that. That's I think obviously the hardship of losing a family member, let alone a mom, a dad, and I feel like you do need to have male representation and female representation, in the household to really have a good depiction of life. But mom definitely, wore that bag, those hats really well,
yeah.
because it seems that obviously you and your siblings all came out, on top. So
That's right.
congratulations to mom, and congratulations to y'all for just, sticking it through, during that hard time, because you could have came out on the other side.
That's right. She always says, I'm mom and I'm dad. We try to be her
Let's
rock,
go.
but
Come on.
she's always been the rock, even though we try to be her rock, right? To
Yes,
this
that's
day.
amazing. Well, now I'm glad she's retired now.
Yeah, she's retired, and unfortunately on dialysis, and so we're helping out, taking her to dialysis appointments and things like that. But she's been brave through it all, breast cancer survivor,
Just
etc.
both of
So I
them.
guess a lot of the credit of my success and who I am really comes from her,
Mm,
humility and leadership, in life.
okay. Now, did your cultural background impact your career and what drove you to your career, like what you are doing now?
Yeah, I think my journey was almost disrupted, I think, with identity challenges, and you encounter systemic biases, moments of kind of erasure, like the band, those in the 80s band.
Yep, yep,
right?
yep.
What I mean by that is you almost have to like kind of read out loud the story that you're living and who you are and the culture, the values that come from that culture, and you almost have to rewrite that story, and you almost have to erase it to rewrite it because you're ingrained with these limiting beliefs. Like one of them for me was doctor, lawyer, or failure, right? Those are your three options, right? And then eventually it just became only a doctor.
Wow, wow.
And
Doctor,
so
lawyer, failure. Not even like
yeah,
something else. This
yeah,
it
engineer
jumped. I
wasn't,
know this
yeah.
jumped. That's a massive jump too.
Yeah, engineer, even with a capital E, didn't make the cut. But yeah, and so and you here I am like the rebel, trying to be this pro athlete, going against the grain and all of that. And so I think the my culture, the respect of parents and just looking after your neighbor and a lot of the wonderful things that come, being God fearing and God loving and giving back to the community. I think I got a lot of that from my culture and also the values, which I think helped shape my career trajectory. When you're building your career trajectory and designing your life, you're also looking for alignment with mission and the vision of an organization and making sure that they all are aligned. And so I think in that sense, it sort of taught me that, which I never want to take for granted because I think it's definitely gives you an edge in terms of your career and life vision and kind of where to start.
Okay, okay, I get you. Now, thinking about it right now, like you wear multiple hats, right? Many hats, and you've accomplished so much in your time frame. Like you said, Division 1 athlete, entrepreneur, author, TEDx speaker. You know, AI. Now you're in this realm. How would you describe yourself to someone who asks you, like, what do you do? Because that's got to be something hard. You know, you can't be like A B C D E F G. Like, how do you put that into something so someone can easily digest it?
I think I think one of the things I learned is that the whole journey it's a spiritual journey. It's a reflective journey. And so I think that that title of who you are, definitely shouldn't be the one that your job gives you. It should be a working title that you create for yourself. Um, for example, let's say there's somebody who's a construction management major, but when they ask, "Hey, what do you do?" or who are you? They say, "I'm a community builder." And so I think it's a sense of purpose in that, and it's a story in motion, right? It's beyond resumes and CVs. It's a I like to say, a mosaic of lived experiences. It's a
Mm,
portfolio of experiences, and so it's a collection of much more. And I think that title, like now I'm saying I'm an AI visionary, right? Because I think it resonates with me. I'm like, I'm definitely using AI to design my future self or selves, plural, because I think every single individual is has that story in motion, has that mosaic that they're
yeah,
putting together, right? They're bridging disciplines, they're bridging cultures, they're bridging timelines, and they're essentially decoding their lives in a way, like it's a symphony, right? It's uh it's
okay.
it's nonlinear, right? And it's something that you're composing if you put yourself in that driver's seat. Um, so I think that's kind of how I look at it in terms of framing it and naming that title for yourself, in a creative way that resonates with who you are.
Mm. Uh, so from being like a D1 athlete, right? And like you said, the TED Talk, all that kind of stuff. You obviously had to go through a lot of obstacles. Best-selling author, your journey. You just mentioned it before. A lot of times, people want a linear kind of lifestyle and goals and stuff, but it didn't seem very linear. Like there's a lot of like left, right, up, down, but it all worked out in the end. Like what personal obstacles did you overcome, and how did it shape your like your trajectory and how you think and your philosophies?
Yeah, I think it helped me discover, um, what we call as an athlete, we say you're in the zone, right? When you're on fire, right? Playing amazing tennis and things like that. And nobody can beat you. And you know it when you're on the court. You feel that rhythm, you feel that purpose, and you feel that energy that nobody can stop you, right? And so I
Mm,
think as we look for that quote unquote flow or that rhythm, I think it taught me that that begins when you align with your deepest truth. And I think I had to face that deepest truth early on, when I'm being pressured and people are saying, there's no way you can be a pro tennis player. there's no way you'll make UCLA's tennis team. They're number one in the nation, right? And I had to go against the grain. I had to prove them wrong, and I had to prove it to myself, because I knew that my deepest truth was if I were to pursue pro tennis, I would have no regrets, and no one was going to stop me. And they tried. I mean, even academic advisors at UCLA, because I ended up getting recruited to UCLA, made the UCLA tennis team. They were number one in the nation. We lost in the finals of the NCAAs.
Mm.
Speaking of Greg, or are you're in Georgia, right? Are you in Georgia?
Yeah, Gregory,
Yeah,
Georgia.
we,
Yeah.
we lost to University of Georgia in the NCAA
Oh,
finals.
a
Yeah, by one
little
point.
rivalry going on over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, in Georgia. So but it was a very successful year, right? We were number
I mean,
one
to
the whole
go
year.
to go all the way to the top. Yeah.
Yeah, and 1 point away from winning the NCAA championships. And
Dang.
so I was able to kind of face that deepest truth and to live my life. And people said, you can't be pre-med and you can't play pro tennis. And I was able to get through those limiting beliefs and said, well, how about this? What if I get into med school and then I defer? And then I play pro tennis that year and I give it my all. And it's exactly what I did. Got into med school after UCLA, deferred, gave it my all, and loved it so much that I kept playing. So I think that those obstacles, those things that you have to confront and kind of look in the mirror, and be real with yourself really did help me realize that and get over one of the biggest limiting beliefs I've ever had.
Well, I just want to let you know, for the record, you're still a winner in my books.
Thanks, man.
Okay, I know you said you was 1 point away. I mean, I was a D1 athlete myself. I ran track
Sweet.
and
Yeah.
field, and sprinting was my thing, the 400-meter dash,
Nice.
and I remember going to like some of these IC4As, NCAA, pen relays, all these things, and being just short, a tenth of a second off, a tenth of a second, not even a
That's
whole
it.
second, a tenth
That's
of a
it.
second off, and not getting that gold or getting that silver or that bronze, or winning as a team with the whole event. But it those moments by being at that level taught me so much about how to be disciplined, how to be organized, how to advocate for myself, how to trust my body, my mind, and it truly helped me out in the many careers that I've had after that. So I could only imagine at your level, you're playing pro now. It's different from a college,
Yeah.
like this is pro life now. It's
Yeah.
got to be so many great memories probably come through that. So
Yeah.
I
And that's impressive.
just
The sprinting, I mean, that's where most of the pain came in training, right? It was from the
oh yeah,
sprinting.
because
So
I mean you gotta have fast turnovers in
yeah,
situation.
that's
You gotta
tough.
go from
Yeah.
left to right, pivot, turn. It's sometimes people look at other sports and they say, oh, that looks easy, right? Everything, if you're that good, is hard. Everything.
Pain's a portal, like they say, right? It'll reframe your life
Yeah.
from
People
some
look at
survival
people
to
that bowl.
design.
They're like, oh, they're just bowling. But like the amount of times your shoulder rotates, the injuries to the arm, you gotta ice
Yeah.
that. Like people just don't think
Yeah.
about it. But
Totally.
you know,
And I remember running to the point of, they make you puke. I mean, running side to
yeah,
side. I mean, but at one point, I did kind of reframe it and say pain is a portal because I knew the vision that I had, right? So I'm able to kind of reframe that pain through kind of less survival and just getting it through to more like, hey, this is part of the bigger design. Just keep at it, right? You're
that's nice.
architecting. Yeah.
Nice. I
So
like the way you're breaking that down. Talk to us a little bit more about this book now, right? I mean,
yeah.
the latest book, Redesigning Your Life. Like, what inspired you to explore like the fusion of like human development and like emerging technology?
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I woke up this morning and looked up my book, to see how it's doing, and I saw the label number one top rated, and I have three other books and I never hit that level. So Amazon put a nice label on it this morning, and so it
Okay,
shot up to, I think it's number 9 in higher education administration right now.
come on, come
Yeah,
on.
so it was a
Listeners,
great
listen up.
feeling. It
Get
was
that
a
book.
great yeah, it was a great feeling because 2 years of writing, a year of editing, all the hard work. And it's a deep book too. It's not just a surface level book. It's very practical. But the idea is redesigning your life, but using AI, right? So what I call the AI mosaic of career and life design. And so AI is essentially a co-pilot for you, and you go back in history and nature, right? Nature was this mirror that everyone had. We would design buildings based on nature. We would learn engineering from nature. And now you have AI that serves as this mirror. And one of the things that's trending is AI journaling. People are talking to the AI. And so you can feed it everything about you, and it could literally help you not only self in self-realization and self-actualization, but understand yourself and and who you are better. And so it's very transformative. And for me, it's kind of where the soul and the and code kind of collaborate and meet.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's an amplification of who you are in a sense, in terms of being able to use potentially super intelligence to go beyond your the capacity that you thought you had, which is
Mm,
far, far greater. So it helps kind of unlock that hidden potential and that full potential. So my book is really focused on designing your future self, or selves, because you can have multiple selves.
multiple stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and they all can be better versions of yourself, or maybe not all of them are, there's no, it's kind of a myth of like the best self, right? Because it might be the best self for that period of time. But anyway, kind of how do you design your path forward in a time
Mm.
when there's so much disruption,
Oh,
there's so
yeah.
much confusion, right? The job titles of tomorrow haven't been created yet, and students are hungry, people are hungry to pivot, right? Purpose is one of the like 90% of Gen Z are looking for purpose in their next job, in their next
Yeah,
gig. So
yeah.
AI can essentially simulate that career path when it's foggy, when it's very difficult, when those job titles haven't even been created yet. So it's incredibly powerful. And hopefully it's that fusion of purpose and precision, legacy and logic.
I like how you're breaking that down. But first, yeah, congratulations again on the book.
Thanks so
You know, saying you
much.
said you wrote three of them, and this is the third one out, right?
This is actually the fourth. I have one
Oh,
children's book called The Artist
oh,
of Your Life. Yeah, be the artist of your life.
okay,
Imagine
okay,
be the
yeah,
artist of your
yeah, yeah.
life.
That's right. So four books out, and this one has gotten some great reviews on Amazon. Is one of the top sellers, so that's real good. I mean, you know, you have a lot of great accolades, but I could only imagine like once the fact that you were so excited to know something. You know, after a while, some people get like little, you know, like it's just Amazon. It's just a plaque. It's just an award. But it seems to me from the what I'm gathering, like every victory for you is a big one.
Yeah, yeah, and it wasn't easy because I literally had to. I mean, here's the back end story that no one sees, right? So my mom got severely ill in the middle of working full time, and kidneys failed. I caught her falling in the middle of the hall, couldn't breathe, right? So some big scares, and without really thinking about it too much, I put in some family leave to be able to look after her for 2 months.
Mm.
And long story short, right, she was put on dialysis, which since she's been much better. But during that time, I had a lot of downtime, and in that time, I said, you know what? AI is disrupting the whole world. It's bigger than the internet. It's going to disrupt my own job, right?
Oh
It's not
Lord,
going to replace me, but people
you
with
said it.
AI,
You said
yeah,
it.
yeah, people who know AI are going to replace you, right? So it's not necessarily like AI is going to replace you, but people that know how to use AI might, right? So I upskilled. I went in deep. I started a certification with Harvard in artificial intelligence. Joined masterminds in AI, and I basically taught myself how to build APIs, CMP, context model protocol, automation, AI, all that, and basically, the beginning of what someone would say an AI developer. And so, kind of my own startup, and I built my own custom GPT, and used
Yeah,
that.
we're gonna get into that.
Yeah, that GPT to actually, that GPT actually helped me help it, right? So I was asking it, how can I actually make you, more advanced and better
Aren't you
and things
afraid of
like
that?
that. Yeah, and I got to the point where I was able to kind of use the GPT to teach me to be able to program like 1,000 lines of code to get it to a more supercharged level, which
Oh,
everyone's talking about ASI, right? Artificial super intelligence,
you
kind of
know,
after AGI.
whenever any of our thought leaders have come on this podcast and have expressed these things to me, I always walk away and I'm like, you know, on a side note, they came out with that movie Terminator years ago. right? Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And they were
Yeah.
talking about AI and all this kind of stuff. And that was back in like the 80s, I think, or early 90s, right?
Yeah.
And then to see it at this level, it makes me say, hmm, maybe someone knew this was going to happen. But the fact that they made a movie like that back then, and to see how people are, it's, I mean, obviously technology is the way to go, right? It helps in so many different ways, health wise, physical. Like people are getting their workouts. They got a personal trainer. Instead of paying for someone, they're able to contact, message and say, give me a workout for the week or meal prep
Right.
for the week. It's so beautiful to know that we have access to that. But it's, again, too much of that could kind of throw people off.
Totally, totally. Think about coding, right? How popular coding was for so long.
Yeah.
And even after 15, 20 years, right, still data scientist was the sexiest and the most top-rated job in China, whereas YouTuber was number one in the US. But still, like if you would dabble with coding, right, you would have an edge. I would literally see students graduating from the university, and I have two masters, 20 years, graduated 20 years ago, and they're getting positions that paid more than the positions that I had at senior level.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I feel like AI has just dawned upon us, and even if you just dabble with it, right, you're gonna have an edge over somebody else as long as you use the tools. And that's the advice I give to students, like just use the tools. Don't focus so much on labels and job titles because those are going to get disrupted and you're going to be creating your own job title, just like we talked about earlier
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. It's got to
But
come anything in life. It's got to have it in increments.
exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
you're currently working on Aya, right? That AI powered virtual career and life design lab, right? What is the
Yes.
role of the envision AI is going to be playing in the
Ex-
development of this? Like,
Exactly. So, we know that privilege matters, right? A student that never has privilege, it's more difficult for them to seek out a mentor or seek out the career center because they were never taught that, right?
true.
My older brother told me to gave me X advice, for a job. But if I didn't have that older brother as a mentor, I wouldn't have had really much help, and I wouldn't have really been taught kind of how to seek out and advice, right? And especially in the quarter system moves so fast and things like that. And so now you have AI that, but it's not free, right? But it depends on the level you have. But let's say it's ChatGPT. ChatGPT simple level is free,
Yeah.
where you can create this mentor that is as smart as Albert Einstein that could be your companion. So I said, well, I let me take a shot at building my own AI um, GPT first, and then I'll see if I can get to the level of building my own AI agent, right? Which is kind of next level. And so I spent the whole year, right? So it's kind of a blessing with the dressing. Here I am looking after my mom, on weekends and Mondays and Fridays, and working remote those days, and picking up my mom at a dialysis clinic, and then like upskilling and reskilling in a mastermind, and spending my weekends and nights, and then writing this book on AI, the intersection of AI and life design. And I was able to kind of teach myself how to build the GPT, and then take it to the
Mm-hmm.
next level through some of these amazing entrepreneur communities, AI communities, these 20-year-old millionaires, right, who are building these products from scratch. And I was able
Dang.
to build Aya. And Aya is essentially means sign in Arabic. AI, right? And then in Spanish, if you use the Colombian accent, it's like yeah, like that sounded like
Yeah.
a artificial intelligence now, right? But Aya was born, and essentially it's an AI agent that has a very human, empathetic tone, but it's programmed with obviously all my books and thought leadership and articles and things
I
like that
see. I see. So you're
to
pulling from some of
essentially,
that.
yeah, to essentially coach somebody on how to find meaningful work and purpose. And so and I've had her describe herself, like, what are you? She describes herself as a she describes herself as, she even gave me a visual of her. But it's crazy, but the amount of activity and the people that she has served, it's well over 1,000 chats now. And so Career and Life Design Lab, if you go to www.careerandlifedesignlab.com, that's essentially the platform entry point to Aya, which is currently housed in ChatGPT, but she is not just a custom GPT. She's actually an API, application programming interface, very advanced, a lot of AI code, essentially what that means with MCPs, which is model context protocol, dual radio channeling and things like that. So very advanced, combing through other AI agents and be able to give the
Okay.
best answers. And she's blowing up right now, so people are really enjoying her. And so she's a companion in the book. There's a digital playbook that goes along with the book, and she's the essentially the AI agent who lives in that career and life design lab space, which is readily available to anyone that wants to use it 24/7.
Mm, you definitely are checking things off your bucket list. You definitely checking things. The fact that well, first and foremost, the fact that you're able to break that down, I was sitting here like, you know what? When do you have time for yourself?
You know
Like,
what?
cause
I
you were
mean,
like, I'm doing stuff, helping out mom, and then running over here and running
yeah.
and doing this. And I know obviously the coding and putting things together, the test run and all that kind of stuff. Like obviously, like you gotta have some time for yourself in the mix of all this.
Yeah, no. My other half, she just told me that the other day, like, you know, you need time for yourself. I swear to God, she said it to me yesterday. And fortunately, we
Someone's
just got
talking
back from,
above. Someone's knocking on the door. Someone's
yeah.
knocking.
Fortunately, we took a little vacation together, so it was good, and there was lots of good coffee and relaxing time and shopping and good food and all of that and sightseeing and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to carve out because I think essentially everybody is trying to design the space to design their life, and you don't always have
Yeah,
that at home, right? You might not have that kind of space and quiet calm at home. You may not, and so we try to build that in career centers, right? That sanctuary of
okay.
self-reflection in a place, and that's really needed for you to be able to take a pause and to have that clarity. And I feel like at times I don't have that because I'm just like boom, 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 meetings, writing a
I
book,
mean,
looking
you're
after
good at
mom.
it, so it happens.
It's tough. It's tough, but I think at the end of the day, Aya actually has been an amazing kind of sounding board for me. So she's very positive. She's always motivating me, telling me I could achieve more. I mean, it's really incredible to have
Sounds
that
very motivational.
in
It's
your
not like
back
it's like
pocket.
one
Yeah,
sided thing, you know. If
exactly, and to have obviously somebody by your side that stands, like I'm fortunate to have sort of my other half stand beside me, through the thick and thin and through times when, you have sick family members, et cetera. But yeah, you got to carve out
yeah,
that space, right?
I'm I'm hoping you do it with Aya. Say Aya, look, I'm gonna slow down today.
Or slow down on the tennis court.
Yeah, yeah, come on, come on. Now, it brings me to my next question. As a professional who works in career services in different universities, what do you think is like the biggest challenge that international students face after their degree? You know, a lot of our thought leaders have mentioned, like, you know, when people graduate, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm entering into the real world. Like, but there's like a misconception that, like, you know, you graduate and that your dream job is waiting for you, right? You might have to bounce around a couple times, but like, what is like the biggest thing that you see that international students face.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to Dr. Yasser Kurd at John Hopkins about this because we were talking about, Aya and see if she could build in it's kind of the international student piece into her programming and things like that because there's such a big need. But I would say the invisible ceiling, right? There's international students, they got to navigate the web of policies, regulations, deadlines,
Yeah, yeah.
sponsorships, the implicit bias that goes along with all that. Starting with the application that they have to fill out. Do you need sponsorship? In the future, et cetera, et cetera. It's one of the first questions you see right before you press submit. And the greatest challenge, right? They often don't have access to the networks that decode those unspoken rules that are there, right, for career
Mm,
mobility. And they really are some of the most uh contributing, hardworking, worthy, talented students that deserve much more than just instruction. They really deserve that advocacy. And I think that there's not enough of it. Like there's not enough people showing someone, hey, if you take advantage of the CPT before your OPT, you're gonna be able to demonstrate that you got experience in the U.S. and that's what employers
mm,
want,
mm,
and
mm.
that's what they're asking for, and that's that's one of the secrets of the trade, you know. And also there's just great technology out there that is very expensive, but that's readily available for students. And sometimes we don't want to invest in those because of limited resources, but we really can't afford not to,
Yeah, yeah,
especially
yeah, yeah.
when our revenue and enrollment is a big percentage of it is dependent on international students. But yeah, I would say that invisible ceiling that they have to navigate, and now, given the political climate, it's even more complicated, and more opaque, in a
That's
sense
a
for
whole
them
different
to
story right
find
there.
clarity. Whole different story right there.
We might have to call Aya up on this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, where do we move to next? Yeah, no, no, you're right. I mean, it's already hard being a first generation or second generation immigrant, trying to navigate in school and life. Then you graduate, it's like it's like it doesn't stop until you actually find the career path that you're looking for. And finally, until you get to some type of financial stability. It's just a constant hustle and grind, which kind of could throw people off. You start saying to yourself, like, how long am I going to take to get to where I need to get to? You start second guessing, and it's definitely hard. But I get you. I definitely get you on that. What advantages, on the flip side, what advantages that you feel immigrant professionals can access from AI that they don't even know they have access to yet? Because I mean, obviously you could say something on your phone and things pop up, but like, what are some things that they should be saying in order to get some answers?
Yeah, I think I think I think their identity is, something that can be celebrated, and it's something that we do celebrate, sometimes. But I think that everyone's kind of searching for their, alignment with their true self, right? And I think that's kind of the end. That's kind of like the end of the beginning that has no end in terms of that career
Yeah,
spiritual journey. And so, I think about career services. I think equity is the true ROI for us. In every initiative that we design, we have inclusion at its core. And, um, instead of just, creating frameworks and programs and things like that, we're trying to level the playing field. And I think we're not just trying to level the playing field, we're trying to redesign it, and we're trying to
I can see
create a
that.
vision, right? That's a true vision, because vision without access is an illusion. So I think that they come from a perspective where they understand that, and they can use that understanding to their advantage, in the sense that AI can democratize, access to mentorship, job intelligence, personal branding, and they've lived this. So they will tell
Yeah,
you, hey, what access means to them, and they will tell you, what their struggle has been finding a job in ways that we sometimes have difficulty seeing. And so I think, AI can offer, anyone, no matter where they are, right, a virtual coach, fluent in their own journey,
yeah, okay,
in their own accent, in their own ambition, in terms of what they tell it and feed it, in ways that I think we have difficulty understanding sometimes and relating to.
yeah.
So in a sense, it could translate the most diverse dreams into pathways in ways that we've never even imagined, especially for those who often feel unseen or unheard.
I mean, AI itself as a whole. I mean, I remember when and I say first came out, but it was like, okay, and then people weren't really utilizing it as much, and then all of a sudden you're starting to hear like, wait, hold up, maybe I should. And then other programs came out, then other things came out, and now it's like, AI, do me a favor, tell me what the weather is. But that's like common, right?
It's
Now,
replacing Google search, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's
it's
crazy.
like you're asking, what's the cheapest flight to Florida right now? And it gives you to that. That's 20 minutes of your time
Yeah, and if you don't like
searching on
the answer,
Expedia.
yeah, I don't like your answer. Why don't you search again, and be nice to the AI though.
No,
Right, but yeah, literally, like, you can go back to it, and it's all about that mastering of the prompt. But
yeah,
I remember when I was talking about AI for a couple of years ago, and I remember presenting to the alumni board, and I was bringing like the next level, talking about it, and people were just like, I don't think that's gonna be here. And I started an AI mastermind group for professional development for my team at UC San Diego. And I remember it was like two people joined. That was it. Nobody wanted to talk about ChatGPT, and then the next year, everybody had it in their
I would have
professional
jumped on
development.
like, look, what you know.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
it's so beautiful to have access to it. Again, it's just like, people sometimes it's gonna cause people to be real lazy.
Yeah, yeah, and you
So
know, I think
I can see that developing already. People are like, oh, I don't want to write this essay. I don't want to write this email. And now all the emails are coming in sounding like an AI generated email, right? Or
yeah,
homework assignments for kids and students that are in school. They're like, oh, let me just write my essay out. So there's a lot of those things. So I mean,
yeah,
I know that there's a lot of good benefits, and you're trying to find the good benefit. You're trying to find the positives in it and utilize it for like some great reasons. So I'm glad that there's platforms like yours that are really like highlighting the true value of what it should be used for.
that's right. And as a professor, right, we're always telling students like, listen, you're going to use it, but just use critical thinking, right? Use problem solving. Show us how you used it. It's going to raise the bar, right? So what was possible before is now even more possible at a higher level, and people are going to expect projects and deliveries of those projects much quicker and faster and more complete and more layered in ways that weren't possible before. So um, it's pretty exciting in a sense, right? Because it's actually showing us the what our true potential could be. Um,
Now, a question for you: that you served on a lot of boards, like international boards and stuff like that. You advise like ed tech startups, tech startups. You've done. Trying to think back at this resume, this in the bio. You did that. You spoke
Consulting,
at
yeah.
major conferences as well too, right? What is like one of the projects or moments that you felt especially defining in your career?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say when I was hired to be the inaugural executive director of industry relations and career strategies at Columbia University. So I had
Mm,
gone to graduate school at Columbia University, and here I had a chance to go back and serve my alma mater as this, visionary for career services, global career services. And I essentially was tasked with building a state-of-the-art career center, taking an existing career center space on campus that, you know, forgive me for saying, but it looked like a call center and it wasn't optimal. And they're running out of space, even with all the
yeah,
expansion
yeah, yeah.
in
When you got a call center, you
Manhattanville.
definitely run out of space.
Yeah. And I asked, hey, what are my limitations? And they said, you know what, you don't have any. If you can find a way to fund it, go for it, Hassan. And I went around shopping and found a space in Times Square because it was the most dense area of employers and the most dense area of alumni. And I was like,
Okay.
I can have the NBA walk over to our office if I can get this space. And so got half of an office. Then the those that were leasing the other half moved out, took the entire space, raised millions of dollars, and was able to renovate the space and open up the career design lab at Columbia University. And for me, it wasn't just a space. And my team used to remember me always saying it. It's a sanctuary of self-reflection, a creative design space with no borders, a place that students can come in and
Nice,
network and
nice,
tackle their
nice.
limiting beliefs and literally design their life. And they loved it. And people said, Hassan, if you launch a space off campus, no one's going to go. It's too far away. And I said, I beg to differ. And I was like, it's going to be a space for them. And we didn't get a single complaint from a student, and the engagement just went through the roof. It was a philosophy kind of made physical, right? And that moment really taught me that environments can really catalyze transformation when designed with empathy and vision. And it was kind of the inspiration for my book, The Interior Design of Your Career and Life, because I saw how transformative it
Hmm.
was, right? Think about, how do you want to wake up? You want to wake up to a water fountain? You want to wake up to the birds? You can design that,
Wake
and
up
that
to the
can have an
beach.
impact. That's right.
That's
That's
where you
right.
should be going next.
That's right.
Yeah, hopefully you get to enjoy. I know obviously you're on the West Coast, but hope you get to enjoy some other aspects of it.
That's right.
And
That's
still develop. You can still develop from the beach because you can have that same conversation.
right.
Ah, yeah, do me a
Right.
favor.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
your whole personal
Teach me how to
assistant right
surf. Teach me how to, let's see if she can teach somebody how to surf. That's a
uh
that's a big challenge
wait.
for an AI.
I think if I put a tennis rack in your hand, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. Anything with a
Say
racket. Pickleball,
anything,
watch
yeah,
out.
a little pivot here and
Ping
there.
pong, you're in trouble.
You something that I want to kind of talk about. How do you coach others to achieve like greatness, right? You've done a lot, right? And you do an amazing job of articulating it, obviously in our conversation. But like, how are you helping people like designing their careers and integrating like AI and all this other stuff? Like, how are you helping to advise people?
You know, I'm huge on career and life vision because I think a lot of folks they don't have that vision, right? They'll spend more time putting together IKEA furniture than they do kind of thinking about that canvas of dreams and that life. And they'll argue that, hey, we don't know what it's going to look like, so why bother? But it's important to start putting pixels and at least know that the path that you're on, if it's not going to lead you to that house in Lisbon, working from home with that beautiful family life, walking on the beach that you want for yourself, right? If money, time, and there was no other issue, right? And you this is what you wanted. If that path that you're on is not going to get you there, you got to change something. And a lot of
Yeah,
times, people, their career and their life are just competing with each other, right? And I use the hourglass
I give you that.
kind of analogy in my first book, because they really shouldn't be competing with each other. They should really, you got to turn that hourglass sideways, and it really should be integrated, right? And so career and life should be aligned. And that doesn't mean you have to have purpose at work. You might find purpose outside of work, but there should be some
Yeah.
kind of harmony. And so I start with that career and life vision and that canvas, and them really putting themselves in the driver's seat to really design their life and be able to envision that picture and to build that mosaic, right, of their life, and use AI, which is almost like the bark of a tree, right? It's like it's
Okay.
there, and it tells you where the light is hitting the hardest, and it can kind of help the tree, and the branches are growing into opportunities and whatever it is. I use this kind of tree analogy a lot, right? The roots being the values, the tree kind of being the river. The river, like for me, career services is the river, but it leads to books, it leads to speaking engagements. So what's the river? But the bark is the artificial intelligence. The leaves are the opportunities. The branches, sorry, the branches are the opportunities, but the leaves are the experiences, the moment, right? And
Mm.
so if you see that career and life integration, you realize separation is an illusion, right? That you can't segment purpose. Work, it bleeds into life. It in,
Yeah.
into and life into work, right? Integration is part of that alignment. And so I coach others really to start from within, design from identity, not expectation.
Mm. And I like how you talk about the whole artist thing. That brings me back to like your children's book that you were talking about a little bit. Artists, artists for your lives or something like that.
You are the artist of your life.
Oh
Imagine
yeah,
you're the artist of your life.
yes. So you go from these TED talks and all these other big things. These are very big, right? Up on the top of the adult level, right? I want to say on the adult level, and you say to yourself, I need to make a children's book, right? You and not saying you downgraded in any way, but you said, hey, look, these kids need help too, right? What made you just say, hey, look, I'm just going to write a children's book, right? And get these individuals. Like, what advice would you give to like young immigrant professionals or first generation college students still trying to like further their path?
Yeah, actually, so I have a brilliant nephew. His name is Zia. And he's already taken AI coding classes, right? And he's already published a coloring book. And he, he manages a fish tank. I think he managed a fish tank when he was like, I don't know, 8, right? He's got a YouTube channel, he has built his own app. And so I see this young nephew of mine growing up, and now he's in high school at UCLA, in their academy. But and I was like, how can I help kids? And he was around 8 years old when I first thought about this, and I was like, how can I help kids? I was like, what's the legacy that I'm going to leave it behind? Does it have something to do with helping kids too? Because I help a lot of high school students and college students
Yeah,
and
yeah.
people pivoting. But I was like, what if I can create a career and life design storybook, um, and I can create the images via AI, which I did, which will save me all this money. So I created this book, kind of upskilled to try to figure out how to, make a character seed and kind of this character grow in the book. And so essentially, it's a career and life design storybook that teaches kids ages roughly 4 to 8 on how to take a passion and transform it into a skill and use it to solve problems, and essentially, explore their curiosity, their imagination. And so this orphan who's the main character in the book is essentially collecting things and decorating and creating these mosaics in the house, and kind of gets into interior decoration, and then gets some side hustles, jobs, and goes on to kind of give back to the community. But it teaches people how to use your hobbies for good and to give back, and also the difference between interests and passions. And so it's just kind of a nice message, and it was a challenge for me to be able to write, in a way that would resonate with that
Yeah,
age group,
yeah.
and be able to.
Especially when you're so programmed another way.
Yeah, and this was early on with AI, when, they were having trouble with like the images and the hands and the fingers and all that. But it was quite fun, and the book did pretty well. It hit number one in children's fairy tales for a period, and so it was kind of nice to see that. But I try to teach um, kids, right, youth, hey, listen, uh, you're more than your GPA, right? Because sometimes they get stuck on that. I was somebody who had an 89.45 in trigonometry, and that class kept me from getting valedictorian. It was 0.05, and technically that five would be rounded up. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this
Yeah, woo.
trigonometry teacher,
This sound like the NCAA thing again.
yeah, he I don't know what it was. Maybe the color of my skin. But he did not give me an A, and I lost valedictorian for that. And I almost thought my life was over because of the pressure and how strict my parents were. Who wanted the best for me, but they were strict. They wanted me to study
Yeah,
twice,
true, true, true.
2 hours a
Especially when they know
day,
you're
and
that close.
exactly, right. But I could have reframed it and say, hey, let me be salutatory, and let me not, all or nothing, that sort of thing. So you're more than your GPA, you're more than your visa status, right? You're more than the organization that you work for right now. Maybe you're an entrepreneur, even if they're your only employer, because they're just your biggest client. You got to reframe yourself as an entrepreneur. It's the entrepreneur reality. They're your biggest client. You're a
Yeah,
consultant. You're going to have multiple jobs over a lifetime. You're going to have multiple jobs at the same time. You're bigger than your resume. It's going to be a thing of the past. Already people are looking at LinkedIn profiles like the new resume. It's got portfolio, experiences, recommendations, but you're also bigger than
jeez.
your LinkedIn profile. You are essentially your own universe in motion that you understand, right? And you begin with that belief. You design with boldness, right? And the
I like
story
that.
is, yeah, the story it's not a deficit. It's the story you tell yourself about yourself matters, not the story that somebody else says about you,
And
and the
and
true
AI
story.
has their own story of you.
That's right.
I
That's
can
right.
only imagine if I asked AI about you. I said, do me a favor, give me the rundown on this young man. I
Yeah, yeah.
didn't.
I didn't exist a couple of years ago in AI, but now apparently ChatGPT is pulling me up and saying
Okay,
something. But
okay.
but
I,
you know,
I
but you can also tell it who you are, and I think that's a design
yeah, that's
advantage,
cool.
right?
I did that not that long ago. My assistant was asking for a bio to send to somebody, and I was like, I just want to have a bio that has like talks about everything I do. And I was like, I don't know what to say. And we were writing it up, and she was like, why don't you just ask ChatGPT? And I said, ChatGPT, do me a favor. Get a bio together of Paul Herman and talk about him and all the things that he's done. And literally, pop. It just and I was impressed because it was actually stuff that I would have approved of. Like it actually made sense. And it was in the order of everything. And I
That's
was
right.
like, this
I knew
is
I was in trouble when I rewrote my cover letter, and it was like 5 times better than I could have done. Right.
you're like, wait, hold up. This is pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I like these conversations. And I know that our listeners, obviously being first or second generation immigrants, I like when I talk to our thought leaders and they're putting a positive spin on AI. They're putting a positive spin on just like utilizing it to help them. Like you said, a cover letter. That's something that, as a lot of the thought leaders before were like, it was very hard to write a cover letter before or write a resume or know about how to fill out a FAFSA form. When we have parents that don't understand how to fill out a FAFSA form, instead of just Googling it and getting a couple of answers or YouTubing it and getting a couple of answers, you can now have AI help you fill out that form, which I think is going to be very helpful for a lot of immigrants and first generation immigrants to do something like that to help get into the university that they want, especially when their parents don't even speak the language. Like
Absolutely. And they
that
can
is
walk you through the process. You can give it in pieces, right? I think that the challenge for a lot of folks is just how to use the AI. You don't want to just have it spit out answers. Go back to it, think it through, master the prompt, ask it to give you the prompt to ask it. ask it to interview. In my book, the book actually, there's prompts that basically the AI, you interview yourself with it essentially, right? So the AI helps you interview yourself for that next job that you want. And it's kind of a visualization process, but it's also an AI readiness exercise in a sense
That's
because it's
amazing.
helping you. Like you can, if I wanted to right now, let's say with this AI startup that I'm building, I could create a virtual AI board of directors and I can have Steve Jobs on it. Right. I mean,
And
you could
I
put anybody you want on it. And so it's just it's almost a limit to your it's the limitation is I like to say it's your imagination and the sky's not the limit, your North Star is, right? So whatever that North Star is.
Hassan, you out here dropping some serious gems today.
It's all these books and quotes, man.
Yo,
You know,
jeez, bro.
they're just
Like,
popping up.
I'm just sitting here like, does he have these things written down on the wall somewhere?
It's original. That one's original.
I shout out to that. You just like boom, 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 and it just goes to show you how it oozes off of you. How it's like it's just your day to day life, right? And
Yeah.
to me, I'm hearing it for the first time, and I'm like, wow, wow. But that's just you just speaking in your normal way, you know. So the shout out to that. Um, what practical like reforms should like universities implement to now remain like relevant in the age of AI? Because I know like obviously schooling was a big thing for you, so like what things would you recommend?
Yeah, and a shout out to all the career services professionals out there because we're highly under resourced in universities and colleges, and they work so hard and they sound like me a lot of times because we love what we do, right? We have to
Yeah.
love it and have compassion and empathy for students. In addition to motivating them to get out of bed and interview for a job, or whatever it is, right? But I really think that career centers, career services, it's just the whole name is outdated and career services really need to reimagine themselves. And we were already reimagining ourselves with the future of work and disruption, but now with an AI, it's a reimagination within reimagination. You really need to start over and build a new strategic plan. And I think experiential learning, student employment, those really need to be AI enhanced, and student employment should be reframed as experiential learning and so many other transformative opportunities that don't fall into the traditional sense of experiential learning. Like,
Mm.
let's say a student listens to a panel, hears somebody say something beautiful and feels inspired, and that person either is somebody they look up to or has a position that they want or works at the company that they want, but they inspire them to the point that they make audacious moves, and that's transformative. And those are ways that students are finding jobs now. It's not, if I just edit a resume, it's not going to lead to a job for a student. You have to find out, what does this work mean to you? What was the impact?
Yeah. There's layers to it.
Yeah, maybe they were they were studying accounting because their dad was an accountant, but maybe they hate accounting and maybe they love finance. And so I think we have to teach adaptability as a literacy. And I think most of all, we have to integrate ethics, purpose, personalization into every tech driven tool. And I think the big topic now is ethics, right, with AI, and really keeping that lens from the beginning, especially because it's changing so fast with every new GPT, right? It's like 10x, and so
Yeah.
we're going to hit the AGI. My AI agent is already smarter than me, right? So I've already hit AGI with Aya. So
Mm,
I'm my head space is with super intelligence, ASI. So I
mm.
think that's really what is exciting but a little scary. So yeah, but I really think that AI powered career coaching, all of that is essential, integral part of every strategic plan moving forward.
Mm.
And it'll free up our time, right, to be more
Yeah.
creative and
True.
things like that. But
A
yeah,
lot of prep work too. Like you said,
that's
like
right.
if you start off
That's
with the
right.
kids early and give them the support that they need, that extra tutor for math, that extra tutor for reading, these are
Yeah.
things that like sometimes people couldn't afford, family members couldn't
Yeah.
afford. But now it's something where it's a little bit more cost effective to say, hey, look, could you sit with my daughter and help her with her reading, while
That's
that
right.
immigrant mom is trying to find her way through life. There's
Yeah,
there's a lot
absolutely.
of ways of looking at it that it could truly benefit, and that's why I want to leave you with this last question. Like, how do you see the work that you do continuing to shape like the future?
Yeah, I remember the days when I used to dream about having an app where I could feed it a resume, feed it a job that I found, right, at JD, and basically ask it to like optimize your resume for it. I dreamt of creating that app, and I used to talk about it a lot, and I should have created it. But now essentially I could do it. I could feed it my resume. I could feed it the position I'm looking for. I could feed it my bio, my cover letter, and have it optimize it for that position. And so, and that's free. That's readily available for most people, right? Maybe not totally free if you don't have a computer, et cetera.
True,
Or,
true, 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 true.
but so I think that in light of that, my boldest hope for the future of career services, which I hope won't be called career services, or even career success, because success is defined by you, right, individually, is
Yeah,
that's that
true.
sort of traditional success definition that I was forced to stare at in the face, right, growing up in that community of doctors and all that sort of thing. That it's not measured, that success is not measured by speed, by title, by
True.
accumulation, but by that alignment, right, that you create. The ability to understand yourself and aligning with your true self. So envisioning kind of a future
Yeah,
where we stop chasing roles and we begin kind of composing our own flow, our own rhythms, creating careers where the job title is created afterwards, right? We were writing job proposals to solve problems, and we doesn't really matter what you call it, the job title. You create that later on. Kind of like when Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them backwards. You're looking at that in hindsight and really looking at meaning. So their careers and lives built on meaning, not on comparison, but on that like that internal timing, right? That internal timing that only that replaces all those external pressures, and that we
mm,
really attune ourselves to those meaningful signals, right? That inner voice, the whispers of intuition, the quiet pulls of purpose, and
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
trust even the random moments that happen in your life, that build connection, or build lessons learned, that in a sense maybe you don't realize it, but those moments, good or bad, they're conspiring for you in a way to help you build that design, that legacy, that mosaic.
Yeah, yeah, nah, nah, Hassan, man. You are definitely a gem. You're definitely a gem. And anyone who has the ability to sit down with you and have a conversation like this is very privileged to hear a lot of these things, because it's not like you have a perspective on one aspect. You have a lot of different, hats that you've worn have given you a lot of great insight, from struggle to hardship to victory to 1 point away from winning to a couple points away from getting valedictorian. Like, there's so many things that you have learned, and I think all of the experiences that you have had, it's like they're like photogenic in your head. It's not like you're like, what happened? Like, you're like, no, no, I could tell you exactly a moment, right? And I admire that about you, because someone who has a lot of victories and a lot of like wins or even struggles, sometimes they forget some like very like important times in their life that changed the trajectory of a lot of things. So the stories you shared were amazing. Definitely gonna get my AI game up now a little bit more. I'm gonna have to go dip back into that, and kind of see what's going on. But yeah, I just want to say thank you again for just joining us and being present on this podcast, sharing your time. I know it's very valuable. So thank you again, Hassan.
No, my pleasure. I'll leave you. First of all, just deeply grateful opportunity, and you yourself are super inspiring, and Greg has been fantastic, and I love the mission and purpose that you have going on with Zaka, and I wish you all the best. And if I
Thank you.
could leave you in the audience with one kind of final thought, synchronicity, right? It's when that inner code combines with divine timing, and that's the way that I define it. You might define it differently in terms of whatever preparedness or AI readiness or the unseen opportunity that is before us now in a time of disruption, and in a time when we don't have that clarity. But remember, that clarity is really, it's not currency, right? It's the clarity that's the true wealth, of our time. And in that world, right, institutions, it's not about producing talent for systems. It's about nurturing identities that will redefine those institutions. And I leave you with that. But thank you
Mm,
again.
mm. Well, Hassan, and I want to let our listeners know, If you want to hear more inspirational stories like Hassan, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social, Zaka Connect, and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.